Every night, he came for coffee. Discover the incredible truth behind this lonely CEO's single dad. As Jacob finished another grueling day at the office, the accolades lining his walls felt like hollow ornaments, celebrating achievements that had come at a high cost. He rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of long meetings and distant dreams settle into his bones. Despite the flourishing tech startup he had built from the ground up, a creeping loneliness gnawed at him. He glanced at the framed picture of Lily, her radiant smile igniting warmth and despair simultaneously. Every night, after the final deadline had passed, he retreated to the porch, the mundane ritual of waiting for Tom providing some strange vigor amidst isolation. Tom arrived in his tired old pickup, a jarring contrast to Jacob's polished corporate world. While neighbors murmured and raised eyebrows behind their pristine windows, Jacob plastered on a casual smile, denying the emptiness he felt inside. They shared steaming coffee, watching the stars emerge one by one, an inviting cocoon from the world that felt increasingly hostile. But beneath that serene facade lay a storm of unprocessed grief, reflecting on the father he had lost unexpectedly only 2 years prior. "Every time I see those awards," he confessed one evening, the steam mingling with the cool night air, "I wonder if my dad would be proud." Tom's gaze turned sharp, betraying a depth Jacob often overlooked. "Pride isn't what it's cracked up to be, you know. Sometimes it's just chains we cling to." A wave of unease washed over Jacob. He didn't want chains, he wanted connection. Yet the more he spoke with Tom, the more he unraveled. Tom had been a mentor once, a guiding star in Jacob's meteoric rise, but now the tables had turned. There was an unsettling familiarity in Tom's stories about ambition crushed by relentless financial crises that resonated too closely with his own fears. "Your old man didn't just teach you how to win," Tom noted one fateful night, his voice lower, filled with urgency. "He taught you how to sacrifice everything for it. The secret I never told you, it's tied to why I fell. You should know about it." Jacob's stomach twisted. The revelation felt like a betrayal, digging deep into the carefully constructed notions of his father's integrity. Confusion clouded his thoughts. If his father's dreams were laced with sacrifices leading to failure, how could Jacob steer his path toward success without falling into the same abyss? Just then, a crunch echoed. A distant car drove past, and the reality of their secluded moments came crashing down around him. Jacob's insecurities leaped forward, the anxiety tightening around his chest. What if he was destined to repeat his father's mistakes? Could he cultivate growth without losing his family's essence? "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening," Tom said, interrupting the weighty silence. "YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue." Tom's words lingered in the air, heavy with unresolved questions and hidden histories that tangled in Jacob's mind. The unrelenting clock ticked, every second amplifying the enormity of Jacob's choices. His hand trembled slightly as he set his cup down, contemplating what a life anchored only in ambition truly meant. Caught in a tempest of ambition and familial unrest, Jacob felt the pressure surge. It was as if the universe was watching, silently demanding an answer. Here, on that porch, starlit night, he confronted his truth. Could he chase the definition of success without sacrificing his identity or repeating past failures? As their coffee cups emptied beneath the encroaching darkness, a single thought erupted, leaving Jacob clamoring for resolution.
In seeking to honor his family's fractured legacy, could he redefine dreams into something his daughter would be proud of, something tethered by love instead of ambition? The night stretched on, thick with tension, and just like that, the immense weight of uncertainty hung heavy, waiting to unravel in the chapters yet to come. Sitting on the porch, the stars swirled like distant reminders of dreams lost and futures uncertain. Jacob's heart raced as he folded the remnants of his thoughts into the dense night air. The gulf between his aspirations and his reality felt grotesquely vast. Was his father's legacy, once perceived as a guiding star, simply an illusion masked by success? He breathed deeply, attempting to steady the turmoil raging within. The next day, burdened with the previous evening's revelations and questions, Jacob entered the high-rise office, greeted by the deafening chatter of busy professionals. On the surface, it was just another formatted day, but beneath that facade was an awakening. He was no longer willing to sacrifice his sanity at the altar of achievement. Not anymore. Instead of locking himself in his corner office, he made a deliberate choice. When Maria, his resourceful assistant, approached him with updates on the latest project, Jacob offered a fraction of a smile that felt less rehearsed than usual. "Let's take this to the conference room. I want everyone's input on the next steps." The surprised looks from the team hinted at his usual aloofness, a deliberate distance he had cultivated to safeguard his ambitions. Yet today, he was craving collaboration, connection. The conference room buzzed with energy as ideas flew across the table. For the first time in years, Jacob felt excitement pulse through the air, igniting a shared purpose. In that moment, he recognized the truth. Success wasn't merely captured through accolades. It thrives amidst collective creativity. With each voice that chimed in, Jacob sensed remnants of his father's
teachings shifting. Honoring his legacy didn't equate to replicating past mistakes. It was about using that experience as a compass, a guide through the murky waters of fear and loss. Later, he reached for his phone and called Lily's teacher, intent on volunteering for the upcoming science fair. The events of the last few weeks had jolted him awake. It was time to foster a relationship with her that transcended the superficialities of being a busy dad. "Count me in," he said, determination etched in his voice. That evening, as Jacob sat on the floor of his living room, surrounded by cardboard models and colorful science experiments, he caught sight of Lily's beaming face. She fell into his arms, her laughter echoing around the room. In that moment, he felt a sense of completeness he had not experienced in years. The whirlwind of corporate pressures melted away, replaced by the warmth of a loving relationship and shared dreams. Yet, a nagging doubt flickered at the edge of his mind as he recalled Tom's warnings. As the final touches were made to the volcano project, Jacob couldn't ignore the space that Tom's counsel occupied in his brain. The burden of his father's misguided sacrifice still loomed over him, and it buzzed there like static electricity, waiting to ignite something deeper within him. The following days took on a frenetic pace. Balancing his father's legacy, professional responsibilities, and his role as a father required an acute awareness. The risk of failing his daughter weighed heavily. While the success of the startup blossomed, Jacob couldn't help but wonder what it all meant if he couldn't redefine it in a way that honored his own deeper values. Sitting behind his desk one evening, he opened an email from Tom. "Meet me at the old diner tomorrow," it read cryptically. Jacob's heart raced at the thought of facing the man whose opinions had colored his perceptions about everything he once held dear. What new complexities would this meeting unravel? Resolved yet anxious, Jacob stared at the clock. This was the moment. Tomorrow would signal a confrontation with his past, a reckoning with the decisions he had to make moving forward. Should he allow Tom to unveil more secrets that could alter his understanding of success yet again? As uncertainty marched forth, he felt the sting of something crucial hovering in the balance.
With a deep breath, he prepared for an encounter that could either bind him to the past or free him into a future of his own making. Jacob arrived at the old diner, the neon lights flickering with a kind of pulsing rhythm that felt oddly comforting. This place held a history of shared meals, laughter, and heated debates. Yet now it felt more like an arena where his past and future were set to collide. He spotted Tom in a booth at the back, an empty cup in front of him, eyes sharpened by the dim light. As he approached, the weight of their shared
History hung thick between them, unresolved feelings clinging like dust in the air. Tom greeted him with a nod, the familiar facade of amicable authority masking a tension Jacob could almost taste. "You came." "I did," Jacob replied, sliding into the booth. The moment felt significant, a pivot point in his life, where decisions would conjure either clarity or chaos. Tom leaned forward slightly, his voice low. "You've been changing things at the office, haven't you? People are talking about you." "A change was necessary," Jacob said, trying to read Tom's expression. "But it's more than that. I'm trying to understand what success really means, not just for the business, but for my life." Tom's brow furrowed momentarily, as if Jacob had drawn back a curtain on something he hadn't expected. "You know, Jacob, your father had a vision, a staunch dedication to the company. You're questioning that commitment, but I don't think you grasp the consequences of rewriting the narrative." Jacob felt a surge of defiance. "Since when has commitment meant losing sight of who you are? I refuse to repeat the same sacrifices he made." Silence settled, thick and almost tangible. Tom regarded him with an intensity that stirred Jacob's own apprehensions. "You're right. Success doesn't mean the same to everyone, but there's a fine line. Sometimes pursuing your passion can be misguided if it leads to imbalance." The words settled heavily. For all his attempts at redefining his path, doubt still gnawed at him. Could he really navigate the corporate labyrinth while cultivating genuine relationships with Lily and himself? "And what if I fail at both?" he questioned, the vulnerability leaking through the cracks in his bravado. Tom's expression softened slightly, and he leaned back. "Failure is part of any journey, but in your quest for balance, you might miss vital opportunities, or repeat your father's mistakes in a more insidious way." Jacob's heart raced, the familiar static creeping in as he considered the implications. Did he risk dismantling everything his father built, or was it time to breathe new life into that legacy, infusing it with his values? "So, what are you saying? I should just keep following the path laid out for me?" "No, I'm saying you need to educate yourself, understand the nuances of what you're trying to accomplish. It isn't enough to have passion. A strategy is essential." The exchange lingered with Jacob like an echo of unresolved tension. He had dedicated so much of himself to avoid his father's trajectory, yet here he was, confronting the specter of that very path, armed only with determination and self-doubt. "What do you find most valuable in your work?" Jacob asked, shifting the conversation. Tom paused, seemingly caught off guard by the question. "Honestly, it's the impact we have on our people, our ability to nurture talent and inspire. I don't always get it right, but that's what drives me." Jacob felt the stirrings of something deeper inside him, a flicker of recognition. Nurturing talent and building connections. "I want to integrate that into my vision. But how?" Tom smiled faintly, the warmth of their previous camaraderie surfacing. "Start small. It's easy to lose sight of what matters in a rush for results. Focus on fostering skills in others as much as in yourself." As the conversation unfolded, Jacob realized that Tom wasn't just presenting a critique of his approach. He was offering a lifeline, a way to bridge the gap between ambition and authenticity. They parted ways later, but as Jacob walked toward his car, the world outside felt different. There was a current of possibility threading through the air. Driving home, he contemplated Tom's advice. What risks lay ahead if he committed to a more nurturing approach? Could he blend his newly discovered values with the expectations of corporate success? Lost in thought, Jacob looked up to see a sprawling oak tree silhouetted against the twilight. It seemed to symbolize growth, development, not just to the sky, but also in ways that preserved its roots, its essence. As he parked, an unexpected idea sparked in his mind. Perhaps the science fair wasn't just an activity. It could serve as a platform to engage not only with Lily, but also with his own vision of success. What if that event was a microcosm of the bigger journey? Tomorrow, he would ask Lily for her ideas, fostering the same creative spirit within her while rediscovering his own. But would that be enough to transform his understanding of legacy and success? With the weight of possibilities settling in his chest, he entered his home. The evening was still young, but with thoughts racing, the pressing realization loomed. He needed a plan, one that could harmonize the lessons from the past with aspirations for the future. But how? Uncertainty lingered warmly, his pulse quickening as he walked toward Lily's bedroom, ready to ask questions that could unveil both their futures. Jacob woke early the next morning, anxiety curling in his stomach like a tight fist. The events of the previous day replayed in his mind as he brewed a cup of coffee. Tom's words lingered, understanding the nuances of success, nurturing talent, cultivating authentic connections. He stared blankly at the steam rising from his mug, the truths he had uncovered hanging upon him like heavy fabric. He set the cup down with determination. Today was the day he would engage Lily, not just as a father, but as someone who preferred a fresh approach, a collaborative partner in creativity. With each step toward the dining room, he felt the shifting weight of responsibility, a shifting tide that called him to create something meaningful. "Hey, Lily, are you awake?" "5 more minutes," came the muffled response. Jacob chuckled, a warmth blooming in his chest. His daughter's relentless spirit had always been her defining trait. Taking a moment to collect his thoughts, he jotted down ideas on a notepad. What could they develop together? A project that sparked curiosity, invention, and an understanding of teamwork? The notion felt exhilarating, yet the fear of inadequacy clawed at him. What if he failed to inspire her? What if she saw him as just another adult trying to impose expectations? "All right, I'm coming in," Jacob called out, pushing open the door to her room. Lily sat up, her hair a wild array, still clinging to the dreams that danced through her night. "Dad, what's up?" "I was thinking," he began, nerves bubbling up inside as he approached her bedside, notebook in hand. "What if we worked on something for the science fair together?" Her eyes twinkled with interest, and Jacob felt some of his hesitation loosen. "Really? Like what?" "I thought we could come up with an idea that combines science and creativity, something that excites you," he suggested, enthusiasm lacing his voice as he flipped open the notebook to reveal sketches and wild ideas. Lily leaned in closer to study his notes. "Whoa, these are cool. Can we build a model of a solar system with moving planets?" Jacob's heart soared. The very whimsy of her suggestion reminded him of his own childhood, the joy of invention, the wonder of possibility. "That's an amazing idea. We could figure out how to power the planets with solar energy, too. How about getting specific, like which planet will be powered by batteries and which one by the sun?" "Yeah, and I want Jupiter's storm to spin," she added, bouncing with excitement. As they brainstormed, Jacob saw a shift. It wasn't just about the project, it was a reflection of their bond, and the more he elicited her ideas, the more he realized it was also shaping his vision of success. The nurturing of her creativity mirrored the nurturing of his own aspirations, a synergy that ignited potential in both of them. "Let's make a plan," he proposed, guiding her to grab some paper. "We can break it down step by step." In that moment, he felt like he was not only teaching, but also learning. Hours slipped by as they sketched ideas, shared laughs, and fell into discussions that were less about authority and more about partnership. The weight in Jacob's chest dissipated. He felt lighter, more connected. But even as they wrapped up for the day, a new tension threaded through his thoughts. Was he doing enough? What barriers lay ahead that he hadn't yet perceived? He was just beginning to understand the need for strategy, as Tom advised. Lily grinned, her eyes sparkling like the stars they had just drawn, and Jacob felt a strange mixture of hope and apprehension. Could they sustain this collaborative spirit? Would this evolving relationship with her reflect in his professional life? As he tucked Lily into bed that night, a question echoed in his mind. Would nurturing this new dynamic lead to broader truths about himself and his approach to work? That uncertainty stirred within him. Tomorrow would offer fresh challenges and more.
Importantly, direct confrontations with his insecurities and aspirations. As he kissed her goodnight, he vowed that he wouldn't shy away from the obstacles waiting on the horizon. The time had come to face the complex tapestry of his legacy that intermingled with the values he wished to instill in Lily. Would he rise to the occasion, or would his doubts obscure the path forward? Jacob woke the next day with a clarity he hadn't felt in years. The sun streamed through the window, casting golden light that seemed to push away the remnants of doubt lingering in his mind. He brewed a fresh cup of coffee, the rich aroma awakening his senses and sharpening his focus. Today, he resolved to put one foot forward on a different path, one defined not only by his career aspirations, but also by his role as a father and collaborator. After spending time planning the project with Lily, he decided to approach his work with that same spirit of partnership. The idea made him giddy with anticipation. He felt the winds of change stirring inside him. At the office, Jacob had always been known for his meticulous work ethic, but there was an undercurrent of loneliness. Colleagues respected him, but kept their distance, perhaps sensing an impenetrable fortress around his heart. Today, as he entered the conference room, he noticed the way they shifted in their seats, barely meeting his eyes. He couldn't carry that barrier any longer. "Good morning, everyone," he greeted, forcing a warmth into his voice. "I'd like to gather some thoughts for our next project. I want to hear your ideas, not just mine." The table fell silent, and for a moment he felt a familiar chill creep into his confidence. But he pressed on. "I've found that collaboration can yield the most innovative solutions. Let's brainstorm. What challenges should we address?" One by one, faces brightened with apprehension, quickly replaced by interest. Hands rose tentatively. "What if we explored more community-driven initiatives?" suggested Michelle, one of the younger analysts. "A project that directly involves our client base. It could enhance engagement." "Great idea," Jacob replied, nodding. "What metrics could we use to measure that engagement?" As they delved deeper into conversation, he felt walls collapsing around him. For the first time, he engaged with colleagues not just as coworkers, but as equals, partners in creation. Each shared idea flourished into a collaborative discussion that felt electric. Yet as the meeting closed, he couldn't shake an unsettling worry. What would happen when the excitement ebbed? Was he equipped to maintain this new, transparent approach? Could he sustain the vulnerability it required? Leaving the conference room, he caught Tom in the hallway. "I need your insight," Jacob began, a hint of urgency in his voice. "I've made it a point to involve the team more actively, but I keep doubting myself. Am I capable of this kind of leadership?" Tom studied him, an inscrutable expression settling over his features. "Are you doubting your ability or your fear of being vulnerable?" he countered. "Having a genuine stake in collaboration means exposing ourselves to failure. You can't shelter behind authority anymore if that's the approach you want." Jacob's mind raced. It was a clear challenge, one that reverberated in the same vein of his journey with Lily. How ironic that he sought to inspire her creativity while grappling with his insecurities as a leader. The mixed feelings churned in him like a storm waiting to burst. "What if I screw it up?" he murmured, half to himself. "What if this new path leads to failure?" "That's the risk you take," Tom replied, with a flicker of determination in his eyes. "But it's also where growth happens. If you want them to thrive, you have to show them your own."
Jacob walked back to his desk, a new resolve replacing the anxiety swirling inside him. This was about more than a successful project. It was about embracing his own complexity. Each conversation with Lily shaped his perception. What if, in doing so, he could find a mirror for his professional life? As he began jotting down potential goals for the team, a realization unfurled inside him. He was at a crossroads, echoing the same challenge he faced with Lily, the delicate balance of leadership laced with vulnerability. And so the question echoed louder within him. Was he truly ready to embrace this new reality? Tomorrow would be critical. He had to face not just questions, but daring choices in how he'd lead. The importance of his decisions loomed ahead as he reflected on the kind of legacy he wished to forge, not just within his family, but in his career as well. What unforeseen obstacles lay in the journey ahead? Would he rise to meet them, or would his fears overshadow the path he sought to illuminate? Early the next morning, Jacob sat alone in a corner of his favorite cafe, a steaming mug of coffee cradled in his hands. The smell of freshly baked pastries hung in the air, and for a moment he found solace in the clattering of cups and the buoyancy of laughter around him. However, this comfort was short-lived. The gravity of what lay ahead weighed heavily on his shoulders, pulling his thoughts back to the challenges within the office. Today, he would take bold steps. He could no longer afford to retreat. As he prepared for the team meeting, Jacob mulled over the weight of his responsibilities. Tom's words echoed in his mind like a litany of doubts. Was he really ready to relinquish authority and embrace this new collaborative style? Sweat beaded at his brow, mixing with the steam rising from the cup. In the conference room, Jacob chose not to start with an agenda. Instead, he took a breath and turned to his team. "I want to share something personal," he said, surprising even himself. "Lily, my daughter, has been pushing me to be more open and creative. I realized that if I can do that at home, I need to bring the same energy here." The team exchanged glances, some showing intrigue, others skepticism. Nerves tangled inside him. What if this approach fell flat? "You hint at being vulnerable, but what does that mean for our work?" asked Sarah, an analytical mind known to cut through ambiguity. Jacob paused, finding strength in the sincerity of her question. "It means admitting I don't have all the answers. Together, we'll face the uncertainties ahead. I invite each of you to share not only your ideas, but also your concerns." The response was mixed. Some voices rose tentatively, and others remained shy, hesitant to reveal their thoughts. But as the discussion unfolded, he sensed a shift. Walls began to crumble. Ideas morphed from mere concepts into animated conversations. Lily's spirited urge to create and his own longing for connection sparked a realization. He had a talent for not just leading, but nurturing ideas into vibrant life. Engaging with his team felt exhilarating. He was no longer just an executive imposing direction. He was a collaborator molding a shared vision. Still, the undercurrent of fear persisted. After the meeting ended, Jacob found himself staring at the whiteboard filled with notes and ideas, a tapestry of creativity woven by his team. Yet, as excitement bubbled within him, an even deeper concern lurked in his heart. What if opening up further revealed not just professional vulnerabilities, but personal inadequacies? He stepped out for a quick breath, leaning against the chilled glass of the building's exterior. His pulse quickened. Failure had always been a looming specter for him. Could he withstand the imperfect nature of collaboration? He needed validation. "Tom," he called out as he noticed his colleague walking toward him. "Do you really think this is the way forward? Can vulnerability actually lead to stronger leadership?" Tom looked thoughtful. "You're not just asking to uplift the team, you're also confronting yourself. Think of it as a dance. You might step on toes, but the rhythm is where creativity thrives. Besides," Tom added with a slight smirk, "there's always room for recovery." Jacob chuckled, but felt a knot in his stomach. What if the dance ends in chaos? Chaos can be creative, Tom replied, an encouraging nod in his direction. Emboldened yet anxious, Jacob returned to his desk, the question buzzing in his head. How would he respond to the chaos that could emerge? This new direction required a level of courage he had yet to fully comprehend. Each decision could mar or define him, shaping not only the project, but his legacy as a leader and father. Just as he prepared to map out the next steps, his phone buzzed, a message from Lily, the kind that always ignited warmth inside him. "Don't forget to be brave today, Dad." Her words ignited a spark within. Perhaps her belief in him was what he needed to celebrate his journey towards vulnerability. With renewed perspective, he began to, no longer muddled by fear. Yet a new trepidation lurked. How would he measure success on this uncharted path? What awaited him in the days to come? Would this newfound courage solidify his role as a leader, or unravel the very fabric he'd begun to weave? A sense of impending change loomed, waiting just beyond the horizon. Jacob sat at his desk, papers spread out like the cacophony of thoughts in his mind. As he reviewed the notes from the meeting, he felt an exhilarating mix of possibility and tension. Ideas were sprouted from discussions, yet amidst them lurked an unsettling fear of inadequacy. Could he really sustain this orderless creativity? His internal grappling was a tempest, but he refused to drown in doubt. He tapped the pen against the table, a rhythmic counterpoint to the thoughts racing through his head. The stark walls of the conference room felt both reassuring and stifling. Could a space intended for collaboration evolve further? As he leaned back, he envisioned transforming it into an incubator of ideas, a sanctuary for experimentation without fear of failure. But how? He grabbed his phone, hastily scrolling through messages, eyes landing on Tom's confident assertion about chaos being creative. Suddenly, an idea struck him, a more structured form of chaos. A weekly brainstorming session where failures were openly discussed alongside successes, each marked on a whiteboard as a badge of honor. He could establish a culture where mistakes weren't feared but embraced. But would his team engage? The ghost of skepticism loomed large. He recalled Sarah's skepticism about vulnerability. Would his past experiences dissuade them from participating in this new journey? Anxiety twisted in his stomach. He took a deep breath and stood. Today, he would put together an outline for how these sessions might work. Taking action felt empowering as he stepped towards the shared workspace. This wasn't just about him. It was about enhancing collective confidence, unlike anything he had delivered before. As he began drafting his vision on the whiteboard, he noticed Sarah walk in. "Are you planning something?" she asked, her tone more inquisitive than confrontational. "Absolutely," he responded, facing her squarely. "I was thinking we could leverage our earlier discussions into weekly brainstorming sessions, a space where all mistakes are seen as learning opportunities." She looked intrigued, the corner of her lips tugging into a faint smile. "I'm in. We need a cultural shift, and it's a start. But it'll take more than just us to make this change stick." "Then let's invite others in," Jacob said, a sudden wave of assertiveness washing over him. He felt the energy shift, as though a spark of enthusiasm had ignited between them. For the first time, Jacob thought, maybe they could be the ones to lead this change. The rest of the week blurred into a whirlwind of preparation, discussion, and excitement. Jacob thrived on the exchanges, becoming almost magnetic in his drive to include every voice, every idea. The hesitancies began to dissolve. He noticed Sarah's analytical voice emerging more clearly, while Jim, usually silent, boldly presented a fresh concept. But as he reveled in this blossoming collaboration, a gnawing sensation began to creep into the corners of his mind. How would he manage setbacks? What if they gazed upon their ideas, hoping for triumph, only to find failure? Would this new system turn on him, expose every flaw? During a break, seated with a group gathered over coffee, Jacob felt a jolt of intimidation. The pressure subtly loomed, a specter warning him that true vulnerability could be dangerous. Being open required exposing personal weaknesses they had yet to confront, a risky endeavor indeed. He initiated the conversation, questions swirling around the table, but internally he felt the weight of expectation. "I appreciate how engaged we all are." His voice trailed off. A hidden truth whispered within him. Would the responsibility of vulnerability pull him down? Returning to his desk later, he received a text from Lily. "Can't wait for you to tell me about your day, Dad. You are being brave, right?" He felt that thread of reassurance. But how could he portray this journey she was encouraging him to embark on? Fueled by both courage and uncertainty, he began writing a message for the team, knowing their first brainstorming session was around the corner. But would they embrace the risk together? As he composed each sentence, a thought lingered, a fear he dared not voice. The moment to face more than just personal inadequacies was nearing. "What if?" he typed and then deleted, wrestling with the fear echoing in his mind. And suddenly, he realized the ultimate dilemma ahead. The time had come to face not just his own shadows, but the collective vulnerability of the team, and that was a risk he had yet to truly understand. How would he navigate this uncharted territory, where each member's vulnerability could either uplift or shatter? A horizon of uncertainty beckoned, and Jacob sensed the stakes were higher than he ever anticipated. Jacob leaned back in his chair, the weight of unspoken decisions pressing heavily on his chest. The glow of his computer screen illuminated his pondering face, yet the comfort it usually afforded had vanished. He hovered over the draft of the message, feeling exposed as he typed words meant to clarify a vision. It was one thing to envision change, it was another to stake his reputation on its success or its potential failure. With a swift motion, he deleted the last line once more. What if? The thought echoed like a rogue wave against the sturdy walls of his resolve. Each time he envisioned the team gathering, there was equally a vivid picture of them looking around, disappointment heavy in the air as they confronted unfruitful brainstorming sessions. The notion of vulnerability gnawed at him, presenting a dilemma. Was he asking them to leap into the void while he himself stood firmly at the edge? The lapses of self-confidence whispered questions to him. How? Could he cultivate a culture embracing mistakes if he wasn't prepared to confront his own insecurities? As he sifted through his emotions, the memory of Lily's message flashed vividly in his mind. You are being brave, right? Her faith in him was a double-edged sword. Could he muster the courage she believed he possessed? It propelled him into action, though the uncertainty threatened to engulf him again. He reached for a blank document, intending to create a framework for the brainstorm. He thought about how essential it would be to articulate the wins that would make it easier for the team to process their failures. Their stories needed to be mapped out, shaping a narrative that would bind them together in openness. He recognized the potential for emergence from shared vulnerability, and with a sudden burst of intuition, he began outlining this very structure. Vision, vulnerability, victory, he wrote as headers on the screen. His fingers, now moving with newfound purpose, began breaking down each category. A flowchart blossomed before him, detailing how the session would commence with sharing intentions and fears, followed by lessons learned from past failures, ultimately culminating in a catalog of collective triumphs. With each point articulated, he felt a charge of energy radiate through him, as if notions that once hovered out of reach now pulled closer into focus. This was not merely an outline, it was his opportunity for personal growth and collective empowerment. He grew excited as he imagined their first session. His team, perhaps apprehensive but willing to engage. Their openness would be monumental. He kept picturing Sarah's analytical mind wrapped around the initiative and Jim stepping out of his shadow. But doubts resurfaced. Would stepping into these discussions really ignite change? As excitement began to fill him, he hesitated.
some part of him still fearing the repercussions of blended vulnerability and professional expectation. Being at the helm required carrying each person's anxieties. Their willingness to take risks would be a reflection of his own capacity to lead. In that moment, he recognized that the uncertainty of others' acceptance was perhaps a projection of his own doubts. What if the core of this endeavor was inspiring belief in both himself and his colleagues? Sharing fears could offer a connection to each member, and therein lay the path to fostering resilience among them. As he paused to reflect, a startling thought arose. Maybe this entire construct held the answer to his own scruples about inadequacy. By establishing a space for dialogue, he wouldn't just be leading the initiative, he would be actively participating in it as well. Confidence began swirling within him, reshaping the fear into determination. He would lead by example, embracing vulnerabilities alongside his team. A sudden rush of clarity surged. If his sincerity could light a path through uncertainty, perhaps it could even assuage his fears of failure. He fixed his gaze on the screen, contemplating the introduction he would use at the session. A simple acknowledgement of the need for collaboration alongside individual strength, fostering an environment where failure did not cloak the mind, but rather unveiled insights. The anticipation of the day took over his thoughts, and just as he felt ready to send the proposal to the team, a message flashed on his screen. An email from Tom, punctuated with the words, "Failing is fear shared together. Let's embrace it." Taking a deep breath, Jacob typed, but found his finger hovering over the send button. If he pressed it, there would be no turning back. But perhaps this journey wasn't about the destination, but the shared experience. With one final thought lingering, what would the consequences of embracing this new structure truly be? He hit send, anchoring himself in the unknown, ready to face whatever would come next. The sun rose, casting a golden hue across Jacob's desk as he prepared for the day. The weight of the message he had sent lingered in the air, an electric charge of anticipation mixed with uncertainty. Part of him longed for the validation that would come from his team's enthusiastic response. Instead, the stillness of the morning seemed deafening, each tick of the clock a reminder of the unknown he now faced. Despite his intention to embrace vulnerability, he felt a creeping doubt awakening within him. Jacob wrestled with the thought that perhaps he had been overly ambitious. What if the team rejected his ideas? The fear of having misstepped loomed larger than before. He understood that initiating a cultural shift would demand not just his courage, but also unwavering faith from his colleagues. The stakes felt incredibly high, yet his introspection about this leap was guiding him deeper into himself. Needles of anxiety pricked at him as he relived every moment of doubt and hesitation since sending the proposal. Jacob paced the confines of his office, teetering between inspiration and fear, acutely aware that he was about to test the very essence of his leadership. The vision he had set forth wasn't merely about reformation, it was a mirror reflecting his own vulnerabilities. As he settled down, a notification broke through his reverie. The email thread had begun to hum with activity. Messages trickled in, each bringing with it a new wave of emotions. Excitement, anxiety, and curiosity flooded over him. Sarah's initial reply stood out, a well-articulated inquiry, seeking clarity on specifics. It struck a chord with Jacob. She was processing his proposal analytically, a natural response that reflected her strengths. His heart raced as he responded, her queries igniting a spark of newfound confidence. Each word flowed from him with a sense of purpose he had not fully expected. And soon, the conversation expanded to encompass ideas beyond his initial outline. As he engaged more deeply, Jacob felt the shadows of doubt begin to recede, replaced with a growing understanding of the dynamics at play. The replies multiplied, transforming the initial trepidation into collective brainstorming, affirming that they were, indeed, in this together. Profiles of courage began to emerge. Jim,
tentatively suggested a possible icebreaker, and Tom chimed in with his insights about fostering trust. Jacob was no longer solely leading the charge. He was building a partnership rooted in shared ambition. Days rolled into a week, and the day of the brainstorm session approached with relentless speed. He felt fully aware of the psychological landscape that lay ahead. Would the discussions unfold harmoniously or devolve into tangled debates? He felt the palpable weight of apprehension and excitement coursing through his veins, igniting the thrill of anticipation. The morning of the session, Jacob stood in front of the mirror, his reflection staring back with an unfamiliar intensity. He adjusted his shirt, gathering resolve. As he made his way to the conference room, he slipped past colleagues who would soon become contributors to this new narrative. The uncertainty washed over him once again. What if they didn't rally behind his concepts? What if he failed? Yet, just as doubt threatened to engulf him, a realization struck. This exercise was not about him alone. It was about opening a space for everyone to thrive. Jacob took a deep breath, reaffirming that even in the face of fear, the most profound periods of growth often sparked from vulnerability. Reaching the conference room, he paused for a moment, running over his opening remarks in his head. They would set the tone for a culture of collaboration he desperately sought. The door swung open, and as Jacob stepped inside, he found all eyes on him, brimming with curiosity. The moment held potential, an opportunity to inspire belief not only in this initiative, but in each other. Yet, as he opened his mouth to speak, the buzz in the room cobbled together a mixture of hope and trepidation. And, buried deep within his mind, was the nagging thought, what if this was the turning point, yet it all spiraled out of control? He steadied himself, determined to embrace the unfolding of this moment, not knowing the consequences it would carry for him and his team. In that silence, Jacob prepared to navigate this tightrope of vulnerability and leadership, fully aware that what came next would irrevocably change everything. What awaited him at the edge of this unknown territory? The journey was only beginning, and the stakes had never felt higher. As Jacob stood in front of his team, an electric mix of anticipation and uncertainty coursed through him. This was the culmination of countless discussions, fears, and newfound connections. The atmosphere in the conference room crackled, the energy palpable as everyone settled in. Today's brainstorming session marked not only a pivotal moment in their professional lives, but also the core of Jacob's personal transformation. "Thank you all for being here," he began, allowing a moment for the intensity of silence to wash over the room. "Today, we're diving into a new way of working together. I want to encourage each one of you to share openly, your ideas, your fears, everything. Remember, in this space, mistakes will be celebrated as learning opportunities." As he spoke, he could feel the tightness in his chest begin to loosen. Vulnerability was no longer an abstract notion, but a lived reality. Sarah shot him an encouraging nod from across the table, and Jacob's confidence found solid ground. He initiated the session by sharing a personal story. "A month ago, I was uncertain about the direction of my leadership. I constantly felt that my father's shadow loomed over my every move. Then, I realized it wasn't about living up to someone else's expectations, but about crafting my own journey." Faces softened, and a wave of vulnerability rippled through the room. Jacob noticed Jim shifting in his seat, eyes bright with interest. "Sometimes, embracing uncertainty leads to unexpected breakthroughs," Jacob added, framing each word with sincerity. With that, ideas poured out like a cascading waterfall. The room transformed into a vibrant hub of collaboration as people engaged wholeheartedly. Jacob facilitated with ease, allowing discussions to flow naturally. Each voice added texture to their collective tapestry. Lily's science project idea surfaced within the session, and he found himself connecting his professional approach with the personal nurturing he desired to foster at home. "Let's break down our hurdles as if we were creating a model. What challenges are our clients facing?"
The energy surged, moving from mere brainstorming to authentic exploration of vulnerabilities and strengths. Jacob could feel the team bonding, sharing not just insights but parts of themselves. Each mistake discussed was met with laughter, turning fear into fuel. Mistakes make the story richer, he confirmed, embodying the truth he had come to accept in his own life. Eventually, they paused to reflect on what they learned from their shared experiences. Each member articulated how this collaborative spirit redefined their understanding of success, not as accolades hoarded, but as personal and professional growth nurtured in solidarity. As the session concluded, Jacob felt a powerful sense of accomplishment. Not only had they succeeded in generating innovative ideas, but also deepened their connections. His fear of inadequacy melted away, replaced with a robust belief in their collective journey. When Jacob returned home that evening, he found Lily at the kitchen table, her science project spread before her. "How was your day, Dad?" she asked eagerly. "It was transformative," he responded, sinking down beside her. "We worked together as a team, brainstorming and sharing ideas. It felt right." Lily grinned, a spark of curiosity igniting in her eyes. "Can I help you with your next project at work?" "Yes, absolutely," Jacob laughed, realizing the truth of the moment. He had conquered the tempest of his fears. He could cultivate a legacy of partnership and connection within both the workplace and at home. With each interaction, Jacob demonstrated growth, evolving from a solitary leader to a galvanizing force of collaboration. The final projects yielded not just success metrics, but also a cultural shift that thrived on trust, empathy, and shared vulnerability. Validated by his team's enthusiasm and Lily's joyful spirit, Jacob felt a
new confidence settle in. He had found his voice, both as a father and as a leader, and with it came the understanding that true success was not the absence of struggle, but the courage to evolve through it. The next morning, he stepped into the office with renewed poise. As he greeted his colleagues, their eyes sparkled with anticipation. They were ready for the next challenge, a challenge he would meet head-on with courage and authenticity. This goal was no longer just about him. It was about everyone's journey toward personal and collective growth. Jacob recognized the vital truth. Genuine leadership stems from the bonds forged within shared vulnerability and aligned purpose. As he prepared for the day ahead, a simple thought anchored him. Here, on this new path, Jacob had finally woven together his personal vision, honoring his father's legacy while charting a course of his own, a legacy defined by growth, empathy, and unwavering connection. And with that, he embraced the future that lay before him, ready to meet each day as a father, a leader, and a man fully alive with purpose. Now, if you feel inspired by Jacob's journey of transformation, you need to subscribe to this channel immediately to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help us continue to bring meaningful narratives to life. Comment below with your reactions and theories about this conclusion. You could help shape the next chapter. And don't wait even one more second to share this powerful story with at least 5 friends who need to witness this transformation. Your support is critical, and only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of taking action.